We're surrounded by language every day, which is kind of wild. We talk with people or listen to songs or podcasts, write texts and emails, read books and ads, and so much more. There are words and communication and arguments everywhere. But what we might not always think about is how those messages are crafted and what they're trying to do. Like in Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream, or Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb. We know words can inspire action and change and even become art. And we think of great writers as, well, great, standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial or the US Capitol delivering their speeches, but not scribbling drafts or sharing ideas or crafting the perfect email that succinctly explains a task. You know, what we're all aspiring to do? Figuring out how writing works and how we too can craft powerful or beautiful or effective messages is the focus of the field of rhetoric and composition. Two words that each have a rich history and encompass and impact so much about how we think and communicate. Hi, I'm Dr. Emily Zarka, and welcome to Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition. In the US and Canada, the kinds of classes that are called things like English or language arts in our early school years often feed into a variety of courses when we reach college. Some might be creative writing courses, where we learn how to craft stories about everything from real life events to monster myths. Others are literature courses, where we analyze stories that have already been written and what they can tell us about life in different points of view. Just look at Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Not only did it create a new genre and change the world, it's still a cultural touchstone across the globe today. Not to mention being a life-changing read, at least if you ask me. And still others are linguistics courses, where we analyze how language works and is still evolving. There's a lot out there to learn, but we're going to focus on a particular subfield within the wide world of English that's essential to pretty much everything we do: rhetoric and composition. Basically, rhetoric and composition is the study of communication and how we communicate through what we create, and writing in particular. And to get more specific, we can delve into each half of the field. We'll start with rhetoric, which people have been thinking about for literally thousands of years and covers all kinds of communication. In fact, one way to explore rhetoric is to head way back to ancient Greece. The word rhetoric in ancient Greek was possibly coined by the philosopher Plato, though the concept had already been around for at least several hundred years. And we typically start with a definition from Plato's student and fellow philosopher Aristotle. He defined rhetoric as the faculty of observing in any case the available means of persuasion, which is a wordy way to say that rhetoric is all about analyzing what options are available for communicating with others convincingly. And to borrow again from philosophy, Aristotle didn't want people using rhetoric as a means to an end. He, and many scholars since, believed that as we learned the tools of how to use rhetoric, we would also learn the morality behind when to best use those tools. Aristotle's definition is famous partially because the ancient Greeks wrote a lot of well-regarded discourses on the nitty-gritty of effective public speaking to create change, but also just because Western education is still somewhat based on traditions from ancient Greece and Rome. If we were filming this in Beijing, then we'd be talking about ancient Chinese texts and the also very old and complex ideas of rhetoric that developed there. But regardless of where we are in the world, modern and ancient scholars and thinkers have studied how communication is rich and complex. And when we do that, we realize that we don't communicate just to persuade or convince people about an argument. In fact, a more modern rhetoric scholar, Gerard Hauser, defines rhetoric as communication that attempts to coordinate social action. And he includes symbols in general in that communication, not just language. Like, we might speak or write to inform, educate, or entertain people, but we usually also want people to do something. So I might be trying to sway a room about how ranch is the best condiment to ever exist. But I don't want them to just realize ranch is a good idea. I want them to actually order it. So keeping all of that in mind, today we think of rhetoric as the study of how we use communication for various purposes and all the factors that impact those choices, both conscious choices and the choices we make without thinking. Like if we're going to analyze the rhetoric behind the passionate argument I make everyone at the table sit through about how much I need ranch on pretty much everything, we'd talk partly about how persuasive my argument is. But it's not just about words. We'd also analyze the hand gestures I use, the tone, and, well, If I'm really intense about it, the lengthy PowerPoint presentation I give on the subject. That's a lot to keep track of as an audience, and that's not even taking into account the audience itself. Many of us assume that when we speak, it's instantly transmitted with perfect clarity into the mind of the person who hears us. But that totally cuts out the way they interpret us. Or my table mates at dinner might think I'm a little intense for making a PowerPoint about my ranch needs because, I'll admit, PowerPoint isn't a culturally typical communication method to highlight the benefits of your food choices at dinner. So just the fact that I picked this particular medium to express myself might make people decide it means a lot to me, so they're willing to hear me out, ignore me because they think I'm just way too serious, or even dig in their heels and say this is an absurd overreach. So if we're going to fully analyze my rhetoric or the way I'm communicating, we have to acknowledge that there are all kinds of things influencing that interaction. And in this course, when we're studying rhetoric, we'll try to isolate some of those factors and see how changing them affects our writing. So we might look at who the audience is and analyze how we communicate differently depending on the person. Like, I'm going to explain my ranch platform differently to a 5-year-old than an adult who lives in a country on the other side of the world, or a person who's very important in politics. And it gets even more complex when we're talking to more than one person at once. Our purpose, or what we want the writing to accomplish, is another major factor in how we communicate. We could be writing to convince someone to buy something, change a law, or hire us for a job. Every purpose influences how we compose our writing. But we can also talk about contexts, which are the physical or virtual environments where our message lives. So this can be a physical place if we're talking to someone face to face, or they can be spaces that exist more abstractly, like in a text messaging app, an email, or a fancy physical report. This also includes when the text or message was written and the culture that surrounds the writer at the time. Like a letter from 18th century England between two sisters is going to look different than the Snapchat I send my best friend, you know? Every context shapes how we communicate, and noticing those influences helps us to make more deliberate choices to find a medium that works best for accomplishing whatever our goal is. Even language itself is also a factor. While English seems like just one language, most people have subtle differences in how they understand a given word. We also have slang, inside jokes, and even words we literally make up in small communities of English speakers and writers. So a key feature of rhetoric and this course is that instead of just sometimes thinking about some of these factors, we're going to learn a way to think through communication systematically. We want to be able to bring our techniques to any communication situation and figure out what's influencing how they turn out. But if we just analyze communication, we wouldn't be fully doing rhetoric and composition. Music, art, and writing are all fields where people talk about composing. It's how we put something together, be it a document or a painting. And in all of these fields, both beginners and experts alike benefit from spending more time understanding the techniques we use to create stuff because we learn more about what we're making and how to improve our creative process. And whether it's a book or a video or painting, the medium being used to communicate meaning isn't made of just letters. It can be so many combinations of photos, videos, captions, comments, even color and motion. We study how these texts or pieces of communication come to be in the field of composition, often focusing on texts that are based in written language. This field is younger than the field of rhetoric as far as fields go. Scholars at Harvard University offered the first formal education in composition studies in the US in 1870. Though, like rhetoric, people have been noticing and attempting to create valuable systems to understand composition for much longer, with a lot of effort happening during the Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th centuries. And we can look at those systems and adapt them for our current medium or form of communication. Like when we choose one photo over another on Instagram, we're composing. When we make an edit in a TikTok video, we're composing. We're making choices that impact how we communicate. Today, the field of composition is where we think through the literal process that takes us from, say, getting an idea while we're riding the bus to work one day, to where we finish submitting a polished business plan to a bank to get funding. Though those two steps aren't all that has to happen, there's a ton of stuff that happens in between that when we're writing, we usually call the writing process. And composition experts can share the tools, techniques, and approaches that have worked for other writers, not just to get through school writing, but to write in personal contexts and in the workplace. So altogether, the field of rhetoric and composition is both the theory and the practice of composing text to communicate. Really, we're trying to be more systematic and bring specific tools, processes, and techniques to a variety of communication contexts, which can be more important than it sounds. For example, Marie Kondo is a well-known organizing consultant whose book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, inspired thousands of people to declutter their home spaces. Given that we have entire stores dedicated to containers here in America, it might seem odd to need a book or consultant for help with organizing. But people can get stuck, and sometimes the best way to get unstuck is to have a helping hand. Kondo's method gave them something new to try, specific steps to follow, and ideas for how to adapt her strategies to their contexts. She became people's personal cheerleader, sometimes literally. She also tried to help people understand the reasons why clutter appears in the first place and why people fall into old habits after cleaning up. Her knowledge of how organizing tends to go really helps people make long-term changes to their strategies. That's what rhetoric and composition gives us as writers. Sure, it's not a how to operate a mechanical pencil class or a tutorial on typing on a computer. We have some of the basic building blocks down, and we're all composing a lot of the time already. But like the people with too much stuff in their homes, we may feel like we're not getting the results we want. We don't like the comments on our essays, or we're always having to explain our jokes to our friends, or we end up in long, confusing email threads with our bosses. So ultimately, rhetoric and composition works to share techniques and systems that have worked for writers. For some of us, these strategies will help us make more sense to others when we write. For others of us, it'll help us write with less stress or write more efficiently. Either way, we'll become better equipped to handle all the communication coming at us. So ultimately, with the help of rhetoric and composition, we can try systems that have worked for lots of writers and communicators, and we can learn a little bit more about what influences that communication. Who knows? We might even find a little life-changing magic along the way ourselves. Thanks for watching Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition, which is part of the Study Hall Project, a partnership between ASU and Crash Course. If you like this video and want to keep learning with us, be sure to subscribe. You can learn more about Study Hall and the videos produced by Crash Course and ASU in the links in the description. See you next time.